Hello guys, welcome again to my channel. This is Adebisi Daudu, known as Shalom, as an author in today Living Beyond the Limit Model Program 1 Series 12. As I usually say, as I usually look into the summary of the programs, the objective of the programs, and the overall of the objective of the programs. Now let's look into the summary of the programs, and it reads: Living Beyond the Limit Models program is based on faith building, spiritual growth, and motivations that will enable the recipient of the models programs on how to understand or having an understanding of the mechanisms that will enable them to live beyond the limit and limitations of life. Also, being imparted with the mechanisms which are involved with the model program will enable them to live beyond the limits and limitations of life. Now, that's the summary of the program. Why? The objectives of the programs, and it reads: the imparted are emotionally self-sufficient, using the program modules living beyond the limit to impart into the non-emotional self-sufficient. Also, we have the overall objectives of the programs, and it reads: being emotional self-sufficient is the beginning of creations and achieving destiny in life. Meanwhile, now let's look into the Series 12 objectives, outcomes, skills, and knowledge, and it reads the objectives. Having confidence and hope in the living Lord, it takes daily knowing and trusting in God, and living by all His instruction given from His word, that will enable anyone coming to Him to live beyond the limit and limitations of life that they may be experiencing in their lifetime. Now, that's the objective. Then let's look into the outcomes, and it reads: having confidence and hope in the living Lord. Also, the skills: depending and having hope and confidence in God. Meanwhile, let's look into the knowledge, and it's reads: daily knowing and trusting in God and living by all His instructions given from His word. Similarly, now let's look into the Series 12 content. But before we look into the content, let's look at the recaps of last week's Series 11, and it reads: being bold in the midst of limits and limitations in life are the divine interventions of overcoming the operations of limit that's been hindering one's success and achieving in life. Now, that's a recap. Also, at this point, we have a Bible verse, and being taken from the book of 1 Kings 18:27, and it reads: and it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, cry aloud, for he is a God. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth and must be awaked. In other words, now let's look into the Series 12 content, and it reads: the difference between Prophet Elijah and the Prophet of Baal is who they lie their confidence and hope with. Achieving adequate result by Prophet Elijah at the point of limit that has been challenging his faith could be linking to his confidence and hope in the living Lord. Likewise, the Prophet of Baal do depends and having hope and confidence in their God, but such confidence and hope they had in their God could not enable them to live beyond the limit and limitation that surrounds their lives. Meanwhile, the mysteries of living beyond the limits and limitations of life could not be adequately achieved or overcome by putting one confidence and hope in the lesser God. Also, adequate and the abundance of result of living beyond the limits and limitations of life all lies in putting one confidence and hope in the living Lord. At this point, there's a kind of a paragraph or a question, and it reads, having confidence and hope in the living Lord. Let me say it again. Having confidence and hope in the living Lord. And it reads, it takes daily knowing and trusting in God and living by all His instructions given from His word that will enable anyone coming to Him to live beyond the limits and limitations of life that they may be experiencing in their lifetime. Also, having confidence and hope in God at any horrible stages of life is much enough to live in total victories and living blessed in life. At this point, there's a kind of a paragraph of questions which reads, living in total victories and living blessed. Let me say it again, living in total victories and living blessed. And it reads, we are all called by God to live in total victories and living in dominion in life. Anything that may want us to live below the commandment of God for our lives are the limit and limitations of life. Meanwhile, Prophet Elijah understood this, and he did not allow such challenges to have a final say in his life. He overcomes it by the revelation knowledge that he has in the Word of God. At this point, there's a kind of the end of program mode or series 12, like an indications, or that is indicating the end of the series 12. And it reads, module 12 explaining the importance of having hope and trust in the living Lord. Also at this point, there's a kind of a questions. I wouldn't know, maybe you have a question that you would like to ask from me regarding how you can achieve the success over the living beyond the limits and limitations of life. You can kindly leave a comment on the content of this video, which we can be able to elaborate and share more instances on how you can achieve the success over the limits and limitations. At this point, we have a post assessment, and post assessment one read, do you ever trust God for a particular thing? 2, during your waiting, how did you achieve your results? And lastly, do you find it difficult to wait on God? I know with this post assessment will also give us a kind of instances how to live beyond the limit and limitation. Meanwhile, on the frames of my YouTube video page, there's a website, my company website, which you can also click, that will enable you to kind of get into the website, and getting there, there's a list of books which have been written or published by me. I know by you kind of looking into it, you'll find some tools or materials that will enable you to achieve the success. Thanks so much. See you in the next video. Bye.